Today I'm going to look at Ireland's worst train crashes and what caused them. The first significant one happened way back in 1889 in the north of the country, County Armagh, and it's still the most deadliest to date. I have been to the spot of the crash and it's very eerie. The person I went with swore they could hear kids. So it was June the 12th and a large group of children were going on an excursion to a seaside town called Warrenpoint. This was back in the days of steam engines. There were 15 wooden cars to be pulled by a 4-coupled engine carrying 800 passengers. Now the engineer was concerned as this was an extremely heavy load for one engine to pull, especially as there were a number of steep inclines along the route. The station master dismissed him and instructed them to proceed. They made it up the first incline, but on the second the train came to a standstill. They had no idea what to do. The staff on board eventually decided that they would detach half the cars, pull up the first half, moving them onto a siding, then return to get the others, then reassemble the carriages and proceed. The issue was that another train was due along that line in 20 minutes. At this time they had no form of communication to alert the other train that the line was not clear. They applied the brakes and put heavy stones under the wheels of the carriages that were at the back so that they wouldn't roll backways. But when the front part moved away, they were unsuccessful in securing the remaining cars and they did begin to roll backways, gaining speed as they went down the hill. It was impossible for the engine to catch them as they careered towards the 10:35 approaching train. They collided and the wooden carriages broke into pieces, bodies flying down the embankment. 80 children lost their life that summer's day. 6 employees were tried under English law as it was before the establishment of the Republic, and they were found guilty, but no senior management. With this conviction, many regulations were put in place to make rail a safer mode of transportation. It was almost 100 years later until Ireland's next major rail disaster in 1980, the opposite side of the country in Butterfent, County Cork. The 10 a.m. express train from Houston, Dublin to Cork was approaching Butterfent station carrying 230 passengers for the bank holiday weekend. The accident occurred as the track had been moved to direct a train into the siding where it would stay stationary and had not been put back to the correct position. Upon seeing it, the signalman tried to alert the train, but it was too late. They were travelling too fast to stop. The dining car and 2 carriages jackknifed as the engine had came to the end of the line. They catapulted across 4 other lines. 18 people died and many more were seriously injured. It was uncovered that the reason why the carriages disintegrated was because they were old wooden carriages that had only gotten a light steel frame put around them. They were in no way meeting the safety regulations at that time. This forced CIE, or Irish Rail, to replace all existing carriages of this type with modern tested steel ones. Yet this was not enough to prevent another fatal crash only 3 years later. This is known as the Cherryville crash. The Tralee-Dublin train travelled through Cork, this time heading in the opposite direction. When it left Cork, it experienced engine trouble, so it stopped and switched locomotive at Mallow. Unbeknownst to the driver, this engine did not have enough diesel to make Dublin, but he didn't check because they were behind schedule. Near Munster Evan in County Kildare, the train came to a halt from a fuel starvation. The driver got out and walked down the line to an emergency phone to call for help and alert other trains. The guard walked down the line so as to alert any oncoming traffic that the line was not clear. The emergency phone wasn't working due to bad repair, so the driver couldn't reach anyone. The guard saw the lights of an oncoming train but assumed it was help arriving. It was only when it whizzed past him he realised a disaster was unfolding. The Galway train had just passed a red light at Port Arlington, but this wasn't uncommon. The rules were that they could use their own initiative when passing a red light and to proceed with caution, allowing them time to stop should a danger be on the track. Before he proceeded, he too had tried to use the phone to see if there was anything he needed to be aware of, but he couldn't get through either. That night, in the marshy area where the trains met, there was heavy fog, and the driver of the Galway train said he didn't see the other train until he was almost on top of it. Survivors were called, seeing a light in the distance on the tracks that then went out. But this is because the Galway driver turned his lights off to try and have better visibility in the fog. He reported that the light was reflecting back. At this point, not all the carriages had been replaced and the wooden-coated ones were still in use to some extent. Unfortunately, they were present on the Tralee train, resulting in the death of 8 people. This was the 3rd fatal crash in a period of 8 years for CIE, which ran the rail network. the other occurring outside Gorey in 1975. A bridge had been damaged by a tractor, causing the Dublin-Rosslare train to derail. Surprisingly, only 5 died as the engine and carriages landed in a field upside down. Even after all this, yet another derailment happened in Claremorris, County Mayo in 1989. Just like the Starways flight in our last episode, this train was carrying pilgrims on their way to the shrine in Knock, and there was not one fatality. And thankfully since then we have avoided any major incidents, making rail travel probably the safest way to get from A to B in Ireland today.